We will now go to the next headline. It is Saving Threatened Wetlands. And now we will try to do something technological advanced to have contact with Connor Walsh. Are you there, Connor?
Yes, I am. Here I am.
Could I just give a very small, short introduction of you? Am I allowed to do that? Very shortly. You know,
Please do.
Connor Walsh is working at the WWT, Wildfowl and Wetland Trust, and is definitely a great resource for the Biowet project. We could say that, couldn't we?
No, terrible resource.
And also, you're a kind of international engagement officer at the WWT. You are secretary at the World Wetland Network. Is that true? Are you secretary at that? Wow. And you're a member at the Wetland Link International. Do you have some badges or T-shirts with the wetlands you are wearing every day, I think? Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't possibly have a name card with all of those on it. Yeah, so...
We're happy to see you. What do you think about this topic we will have now, saving threatened wetlands? Could you please tell me your experiences? The stage is yours.
So specifically, I'm going to be talking about citizen science. So when Kitty suggested that citizen science was an important topic that relates to Biowet, and I'm going to share my screen to get started on that. I have a presentation, and that'll take a moment because it always does. And then I'll click that, and then I'll click that. I'll try again. There we go. So yes, thank you very much for the very kind and generous introduction. I can hear myself coming back.
Excuse me, this screen is not quite correct. Is that so?
Was it the wrong way around?
Yeah.
Yes.
How do I do this? I unshare and I start again. Now if I try that way. Better?
Better, thank you.
Thank heavens. Right, there we go. So I'm going to talk about citizen science, partially how it relates to the Biowet project. And I have to say, yes, I haven't been able to attend all today because I am an international engagement officer, so I've actually had to join a meeting with people in Mexico, Germany, and the Philippines in between. But around that, I've really enjoyed seeing my friends and my colleagues because it would have been great to catch up with Kitty and Anne-Elizabeth and Finn Auden and all the rest of you, and nice seeing people up from Portugal as well, and it's lovely. But anyway, here we are. I need to click the advance button. There we go. That's me with some people we know. That was back at Martin Mere. So citizen science. Almost everyone loves citizen science. Now, why is that? Well, from the scientific perspective, we love the data it provides because you can get more data from more places at more times. And we've been doing it for a long time. Actually, if you tend to look at the Audubon Christmas bird count in the United States as kind of being the start of citizen science, it started in the year 1900. So it's well established. There have been debates about the validity of it and how much you can rely on it, and they're pretty much finished, actually. 20 years ago, an academic survey or study showed that taking part in citizen science makes those people, those citizens, better environmental stewards. And that's the other thing we love about it. It's not just that you're going out and you're, in this case, testing water quality. You're also building a connection with nature and learning the knowledge to protect it in a good way. Just like Martin was mentioning just now about invasive species, identifying invasive species is a really important citizen skill or civic skill. But for us in Wetland Visitor Centers at WWT and in the Ransford Museum and places like that, I'm sure you work with volunteers a lot. And there's an interesting challenge in moving from working with volunteers on a nature reserve or in a building to many, many people in a citizen science survey. And that's an interesting part of the process. So in this picture, you'll see some tweets. This was sent by an 11-year-old boy called Rufus, who is helping out with a new citizen science project we're doing at WWT. It's about eDNA, environmental DNA. So people will sample water, send it to our scientist Laura, who you see below in the lab, and she'll check to see if eels were present. Now, this is actually the start of the process where the scientist, in this case Laura, identifies something that will be useful for her research and figures out whether the general public can carry it out for them. And that takes some discussion and back and forth and trials, like they were doing here with Rufus, aged 11, who had a great time. And then in the next picture, it's similar. That's using our own 3D printer to make a case for a sound recorder. And then that was last year, preparing for putting these systems into place this year. And this is a really important part of any citizen science, and it applied to Biowet as well. Now, with what's happened and whatever happens next, you figure out what people can do, what works for the scientists and what works for the school curriculum, for instance, and how do you merge those? And it's a really important question. Something to think about and discuss over the next couple of days. I'm going to share some, just because I have this, it's quite new in the past few weeks, the Citizen Science Survey of the State of the World's Wetlands. This is something that relates to one of my roles, the Secretary of the World Wetland Network. And we carried this out in 2017 and again in 2020. We've got, you see from the organizations taking part, there's the Cobra Collective, which is about communities. There's the Society for Wetland Scientists, which is scientists. There's the IUCN and there's us. So there's quite a high competency and relevant group for doing citizen science. I'm just going to show you one sample from the results because it's intriguing. Sorry, this is the background, and then I'll show you the results. This background shows how many wetland reports we had from each continent. Now, the continents, they're according to Ramsar regions, so they're sort of geopolitical, not entirely geographical. But you can see what we have there in Europe, 116 down to 44 in Africa. If you think about this, that doesn't seem like a very large number, but we're doing a global survey. So the smallest unit, a pixel, the resolution, is a continent. And so in that case, actually, we have useful figures to be able to work with, thanks to how the lead scientists process the data and analyze it. And I'll show you that one example result, which is the overall state of the world's wetlands by continent. We look at where we are in Europe and we think, is that okay? Only 16% are in a poor condition. Is it fine that 47% of them are fair? These are the interesting situation that wetlands are in. This came from, so 10% of the sites in this survey were also surveyed in 2017. So there's actually quite a different spread of wetlands across the two, and yet the results actually tally quite well. If you want to find out more, please do. There's two ways to get this. If you're a member of the Society of Wetland Scientists, on their website, you can access an academic write-up. If you're not, we will very shortly have this version, this visual version, available on worldwetland.network/survey. We're just sorting out some translations and it should be up in the next few days. But I'm going to look at a very different scale of another citizen science project as well. This going from the pixel being a continent to the pixel being a country. In this case, it's Ireland. The National Biodiversity Data Centre has a website made by some GIS people, really, and it has all these different ways for the public to submit their sightings of all sorts of different species. They get about 200,000 records a year. So the pixel has shrunk and the number of results has increased massively. How do they do it? There's a few tricks which are actually very common to the many citizen science projects around the world. You can see that it's categorized. If you want to just report on pollinators, or if you just want to report on invasive species, you can do that. You see across the top, I'll make that clear in the next slide, that they have apps, but they also work directly in the website, because my phone is always full, so I don't always have the app on me. But if I'm out for a walk and I see, a water rail, I've actually seen one, take out my phone, take a picture, submit it. And that's an ad hoc sighting. That it's not a systematic sighting. And those are two approaches within citizen science. You get someone gets lucky, like me seeing that water rail, okay. Or you have people who go out every week. On Twitter in the UK and Ireland, there's a thing called the Wildflower Hour, people go out for about an hour and they find whatever wildflowers they have. And that's actually a systematic citizen science approach. So you'll see across the top of the screen there, they use Facebook and Twitter to remind people who might be doing ad hoc, but they also have a huge resource for naturalists, botanists, entomologists who want to record their own sightings. And that's how you get 200,000 sightings a year in one country. I'm going to go to a different scale now. Very, very well known. It's eBird. So this actually, if you've ever used eBird, it's really detailed. It's very robust scientifically. They want details. They want how many birds you saw. You want details of what they were doing. If you're doing it as a beginner, you kind of need an expert with you. So actually, it's something that's very good for visitor centers to engage in. And it's very robust data. It's going back to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. It's proper high-level scientific information. But interestingly, eBird published an article last year which turned all this on its head slightly. They said they're not going to use the term citizen science anymore. They're going to change it to community science. And that's because, well, in a simple term, not everyone is a citizen of the country they are in. 4 million people in the world are not citizens of anywhere. Here in the UK, I'm not from the UK. 6 million other people like me are not citizens of the UK. But if I go out and I report on what I see in my local wetland, my salt marsh, am I contributing to citizen science? I'm still a citizen of another country, but if we're just reporting on the UK, then it's a bit of a vague question. And where you can see where it really matters is in some particular countries. In the US, the figure is 7% of US people in the US are not citizens. And citizenship is a very important issue there. It's a politicized issue. And so you are actually excluding 7% of the people from taking part by using that term. So they've switched at eBird to using the term community science. Some other people suggest the term civic science because community science can mean different types of local community projects rather than just observation. And participatory science. This is something that I've seen some of our members at Wetland Link International in South America are using. And that's interesting because the dynamic there is of a former colonial country, formerly colonized country, where there's also indigenous peoples living side by side. How do you stay as inclusive as possible? And WELI members there have, by themselves, switched to the term participatory science. Now, this is an interesting thought, I think, to carry forward, whether we're doing Biowet, whether you're doing your own projects at your own wetland visitor center, or with whatever local community, that just think about the terms. And in a way, it's combining the term citizen and science into one, because it's about accuracy. It's about the accuracy of the term as well as the science. That is simply a topic to discuss and consider. I did read quite a bit of background reading on this, which I didn't include too detailed, but if you would like, I can give you some information on that. You can get in touch with there's my email at the top, and I'll send you I'll send you this presentation and the link to some articles relating to citizen science. That's my 10 minutes, I think. Thank you very much.
Connor, and you will be joining us at the last session today, I hope.
Yes, I will, yes.
So we will see you again. Thanks so far. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We continue the program now with the next lecturer. It is about wetland visitor centers, a key factor in awareness, raising and management of wetlands. And the person who shall speak about this, what we can say about him? Well, Jan Petter Huberth Hansen is a senior advisor at the Norwegian Environment Agency. He works with Ramsar questions, challenges. He has, in my opinion, a unique knowledge and competence when he talks about wetlands in the world. The stage is yours.
Introduction. Well, my name is Jan Petter, and I'm with the Norwegian Environment Agency, the former Direktoratet for Naturforvaltning, for those being on for a while. I know quite many of you from before in this different situations, different activities. I even I don't know Kitty, but I've been working many, many years in Svalbard on the Jan Mayen with her sister, among other things. Okay, today I was asked to talk about the visitor centers. I could tell a lot about my background, but it's so that I have been working much abroad. The reason why I'm back on more national scale is that there was a coup in Myanmar. I've been running a biodiversity project there for the last 8 years, which the main factor was the wetland package. But there it is, green one. So, but I happen to know who was writing the speech of the minister. So I will try to follow up a little bit on some words he left. So short about wetland status and policy. First, a reminder. You're now looking at a picture at the only remaining river delta, the Gävle River. That's the only delta, intact delta from Trøndelag to the Swedish border of some size. But just to recall that 83% of the world's wetlands have disappeared since the year 1700. 83%, that's a lot. And 35% of the world's wetlands were lost since between 1970 and 2015. And the annual loss has increased since that. Norway is more varied in wetlands than most other countries because we have a long country, and we also have the part of the kingdom which is up in Svalbard, which is 1.5 the size of Denmark, so it's a big, that's for you. The thing is that when we are writing, and I've been working with the Ramsar Convention for 25 years, and I am the national focal point. I've been working with Tobias and Chris for many, many years. We have to report every third year to the Ramsar Convention. And the thing is that Norway, we don't have a clue almost what we have lost in Norway. We know that 1/3 of the mires below this tree line are gone, but else we cannot explain. We don't have the statistics. So that's some of the things that has been mentioned in this Naturstrategi, the strategy for wetlands, which the minister talked about. So, which you have learned about today, the 50th anniversary of the Ramsar Convention. Without the convention, probably the situation would be much worse. Just to recall, this could be very many pictures, many keywords. The wetlands that provide crucial ecosystem services. We know about that. It was mentioned about carbon storage. Probably the world's wetlands, they store 3 times the carbon of all the forests in the world. So they are crucial. And about biodiversity, coastal protection, flood control, and so on. That's a thing that you know about. This is a typical example. This is the Orkla River 100 years ago and today. This is not far from Trondheim. And they deliver ecosystem services, provide goods and services, everything, and still we handle them as wastelands. So that's why this sitting government, it will probably sit another week at least, they in Sankthansaften, in June, they launched this strategy for wetlands. That's quite unique, that the government launched a strategy for wetlands. And it's intersectoral. It's not only the family in the Ministry of Environment, but it's for the whole country. And and the background for that again is that every country, being a member of the CBD, the Convention on Biodiversity, have to make an action plan for biodiversity strategy and actions. And that was a stortingsmelding in 2016, and this is a follow-up. And as you learned early this morning, the 3 pillars in the Ramsar Convention. One is about Ramsar sites, like this. One is about international cooperation. But the most important, as Chris underlined, is wise use of all wetlands. That means that we have an obligation to have wise use of all the wetlands in Norway. And that's actually something that I've looked into here. It's a very good document, but the follow-up recommendations are a little bit vague, and it's nobody knows how to follow up yet. But you'll see after the election what's happened then. But the main thing is that the government will slow down destruction and improve the state of wetlands. That's a little vague, but if you can have concrete implementation activities, maybe it will work. Yeah, I think I just have some few minutes, but you can read for yourself, increase the knowledge about condition of wetlands, changes in wetlands, the drivers, and it's an emphasis the knowledge based on what's destroying the wetlands in Norway. But today it's nature information centers. The short story is like this. This is for you, Jan Erik, from Lista, the first lighthouse in Norway. In a way, you can say that the environmental management has an extended long arm with advanced information centers, because the Statsforvalteren, the county governors, and the directorate cannot do it itself. So the Wetland Centers and all the other centers will be a kind of fremskutt position, advanced information centers. We are a little bit behind, because this has been going on in the US and Europe for a long period, but we started maybe in 1997 with authorization of national park centers. From 2011, it was a common authorization. We started authorization of all kinds of centers from 2011. Present national and international values in an area is one of the main themes they have to inform about. Nature and culture, come back to that. And broad target groups, locals, tourists, families, children, and schools, and also businesses and industry. And one of the slogans is to create values from nature locally or regionally. So this is, in short, it's 34 authorized centers, 17 national park, 6 wetlands, 6 World Heritage, 4 for animals of prey, and 1 reindeer centers. There's a lot of other centers knocking on the door that want to have this authorization. And for the time being, they're working with a wild salmon center. They're located here. The green dots are the national parks, of which we have 47. And the other things are 34 centers. And these are the wetland centers, which I come back to. Just very brief, you need to fulfill some guidelines to be authorized. And the authorization is given for 5 years. It's approximately 100,000 euro. In addition, you get a startup sum, a lump sum, of a couple of million. You can also seek project funds, which is also something that this center, for example, has. You made an application already, so you can do it even not being authorized. And most of the centers are organized as a kind of foundation. But this is the main topic, wetland centers. The wetland centers in Norway, there are some criteria. They should be adjacent to wetlands, preferably Ramsar sites. I know listing what you can write in your application. They should also create awareness and understanding of the values of wetlands, for example, the ecosystem services in the broad sense. They should disseminate or hand out information about the protected areas in general, especially wetlands, of course, but and also the Ramsar sites. It was shown that it was approximately 2,500 Ramsar sites. Norway has 63. Or 63 systems, so it's more than 120 single areas. And it should arrange activities and events related to the wetland centers and the wetland I-teams. The wetlands and the wetland I-teams, yes. The reason I asked you was about the implementation of the management plan for this area, where you had the contact with the county governor, because in some of the centers, they have quite good connections to the county governor, because the county governor needs help to get out information and things like that in there from which they cannot do themselves. The World Wetland Day is the day of the 2nd of February. You learn about Ramsar, a city in Iran at the Caspian Sea, and they were signed the Ramsar Convention in 1971. It's also very important that the centers will cooperate with each other. And when I'll show you this example first, because there are some ranking in a way among the authorized centers. And the reason for the success at Nordøyeren, which I will briefly go through, is that they are located close to the Tømmerfløtningsmuseet, Lamper Museum, Fetsundlenser, Lamp Museum, I think you call it. Because then you have culture and nature together. And for example, at a Ramsar COP meeting in Spain, culture and water culture and wetlands were very close. And we are also there in Norway, but we don't see it. So, but in Nordøyeren, they have break the code in a way. They cooperate very much. You can read yourself, but it's so that it shall be for children, which is one of the main. The children and school children are one of the main group of interest for the centers. And in this Nordre year, they have a lot of activities. They focus on their exhibitions on the regional and also the local scale. It's need to have some to be authorized. They need to have some opening hours, and it need to be open in weekends and things like that. They also, in this case, like you, they are on the threshold of a large center. This is the Norwegian delta, which is together with the Dokka, the two large delta in South Norway, inland deltas. There's approximately 27,000 visitors, and out of them, and that comes maybe the Biowet, 4,000 are school children, but most of them are the youngest one and first and secondary school, but also some more advanced pupils. Because of time, okay. But here we are. You see that we have the 6 authorized wetland centers, and then we have some others which have are centers or have an exhibition. And we are here today. And there's a history behind why they're not authorized, but I think that's something we can talk about in the afternoon. But and I've not been there for years. I'm back in the in the business, so to speak. I think that what I've seen already, you should think about applying for authorization. But there's some bottlenecks and limits and so on that one. We very much want to have all these light blue dots as a authorized center, but there's a long way to go, I think. That was in brief, but if you have any questions, I will be ready to answer. Crystal clear.
Very good, very good. Thank you. Next headline is Challenges in the management of wetlands in the county of Innlandet. Now we will meet Marie-Louise Olsen. She works at the county governor of Innlandet. Innlandet is this region where we are now. And this lady, she actually came from Denmark and moved to Norway. But in Denmark, she was an expert and worked in Danish Ornithological Society. Please, Marie-Louise, the stage is yours.
Thank you for having me. As was told, I'm from the governor of Innlandet, called Statsforvalteren i Innlandet på norsk. And as it says here, we are the state's representative in the county of Innlandet. And we are responsible for following up decision, goals and guidelines from the Stortinget, the government. And we are also an important link between municipalities and other central authorities. So you see Innlandet is the red area here to the border to Sweden. I work at the unit called Biodiversity and Nature Reserves, and we are about 13 people working there, and about 22 working with nature reserves, biodiversity in general, and about 8 people working with predator mammals. Yeah, and this area we see here is Kvisleflod and Hodlia Naturreservat, and in the background we see Sweden. So it's from there, this picture. And this is, of course, in the Ramsar area. So I'm going to talk a little bit about challenges in the management of wetlands in Innlandet, and perhaps in Norway in general, or in all countries. I have made a map. We see the red line is the border to Innlandet, and Sweden here. And these Ramsar areas, we have 8 of them spread all over the county. To that, we also have 400 nature reserves, national parks. So we have lots of nature reserves. And as I told you, we are about 22 in managing all these areas. Hyna is where you're going tomorrow, or some of you are going tomorrow. It's here. And now we are here at Dokka. And you see all these areas were pointed out as Ramsar areas around 2012. So when I asked Finn, who is this presentation for? Who is it to be addressed to? And who is the main audience? He said, it's the youth, it's the young people. So I hope they see this online. Not that I'm saying you're looking old, but... So now I'm going to play a little bit of music with some pictures from Innlandet and from the Ramsar sites in Innlandet. And listen carefully to the lyrics. It's quite good. And I hope the youth is seeing this at some point. So this was from some of the areas that we manage in Innlandet. And I'm sorry for all the partners that they couldn't be here, because as you see, we are very lucky living here in Norway with all these great areas. This is what I found in a teenage room, recently read in a book for teens. I think that one is quite funny, perhaps a little bit provoking, and quite good for when you ask me what are the challenges? What are the challenges managing these nature reserves? Perhaps This is some of it. And I also read newly this book by Jostein Gaarder, a Norwegian author, where he writes, and this is a book for youngsters, climate change and the problems associated with the threat to biodiversity has to do with greed. But greed does not usually concern the greedy. And then you can think, oh, it's all the greedy ones. But who doesn't want to get fast from A to B when you're driving your car? Who doesn't want to have a nice house and a cabin with a nice view near to nature? So this is some of the stuff, of course. We want to have motor roads. We want to have luxury. And so at some point, some of these areas get in the middle of all this. So the pressure we have on these areas are, at some point, at some places, quite big, actually. And that's what we are trying to manage. To manage that, of course, we need to develop, we need to move on, we need to expand at some point. But what if it's through a Ramsar area? And we have, of course, in Norway also, and in all other countries, we have this issue. So that is one of the challenges by managing these areas. And we also want to visit nature. But, this luxury, we have been getting richer and richer, so we see more and more having motorboats, all-terrain vehicles, snow scooters, electric bikes, and so on. And they, of course, want to visit also, perhaps using these things. So the disturbance that we put onto these areas is getting bigger and bigger. And the fragmentation, I think the fragmentation of nature reserves, roads, trains, cabin areas being built, that's perhaps some of the most significant parameters that we have to try to manage, besides also managing all these protected areas. And of course, to all this, as we have been talking about today, climate change, invasive species, we don't have the full overview of this yet. What are the consequences in the long term? So to be a little bit provoking, perhaps, this is the challenges. It really is. So we have, of course, overall goals in Norway, and this Nature for Life, as you also talked about, came out about, it's 5 years ago. And it says that we have this we called the grønne skifte, the green shift. We want to take more care than we have done until now for biodiversity and for ourselves and for future generations. And we also need to try to do something about what we eat, how it's going to be produced. And this is also the goals. So we have these goals, and we must remember this in every decision that has been made in Innlandet, in Norway, in everywhere, that these goals are actually decided on the highest level. But sometimes we see this is like being forgotten. And the specific goals, as was told just before, is, of course, sustainable and wise use. And then you say, use. Is that a good word in this term? What kind of use? And this is what we are trying to implement, of course, in everything we do in who's the county governor. So this is just to show you the difference of the Ramsar areas in Innlandet. This is Hunna, where some of you are going tomorrow. and this is Åkersvika. And you can see two different types of conditions and situations. Of course, Åkersvika is surrounded by in quite a big town and fields, arable land. We have motor road going here. We have the train going here. So lots of infrastructure that are going to, when it's there, it also needs to be maintained. We want to make it bigger. We want to do everything more easy for ourselves. So of course, this is one of the Ramsar areas that we're using a lot of time on managing, trying to develop the infrastructures up and then also taking care of all these nature values that we have in the area. And then we have Hunna with almost nothing urbanized around. So the areas in Innlandet are very different. So what do we do and what you can do? And here I'm thinking about the young people. What can they do? And what are we doing at the moment in Governor of Innlandet? So, of course, we are in charge of making management plans for the Ramsar sites and monitor species, especially birds. And for that, we are using consultants. Always be aware of, are we having an area or a nature reserve that probably should be pointed out as a Ramsar in the future? And restore habitats. And that's at the moment primarily marines and marsh that are being restored. And this is quite big in Innlandet. We have lots of areas that are being restored at the moment and has been for several of years now. And what you can do, and I think this community science, I like that word somehow. I think that's a good term instead of citizen science. But as this Biowet project has been doing, trying to engage young people, children, in monitoring species, making them aware of what all the qualities we have, showing them that the data needs to be put in so that everyone can assess them, can use them. Because when we manage these areas, and someone is perhaps seeking a dispensation to do something in an area, then we will always go in and see which species do we have, where are they, how are they on the red list, are they threatened? So it's very important to monitor and try to, community science is a good word. And then of course, and I see a tendency that lots of young people actually are engaging in nature and conservation and life science. So I think we have a hope for the future. We always wish that the new generations are doing it better than us, right? That's enough for me, I think. Thank you.
Thanks. I think due to the program, we now take a 5 minutes break, 5 minutes intermission, please.